see that flange was up pretty high, man. It's got the toilet jacked up about an inch off the floor. We had to set them on these temporary wedges just to keep it level for now, so people could use it until we got it fixed. Flush. I want to try to get as much of that water down as possible.
Yeah.
Lift it up here and pull it right up onto the cart. Good, now I can get it out of the way. Good. So there's our green wax ring alternative that we had put in there originally. And we're taking it off. And there's the flange that we have to cut off. So I'm just going to take a picture of the orientation so we know where to put the new one. Okay, so we just popped off the top of the flange. Now what I'm probably going to look at, you can see how it looks like this part had just been inserted. Not sure if that's glue that's in there too. So we may have to try slicing into it. Make some vertical slices here. And if that doesn't work, well, we can always use our little hole saw that I'll show you in a second here. Our little PVC pipe saw that cuts from the inside, and you just make a ring all the way around and just pull the thing up. But the idea is we do want to get this pretty much below the surface of the tile. Okay, so I'm looking at the new flange that we're going to put in. You can see it's probably not going to fit because when they put the original flange in, it cut down the diameter some, so we need to recover that original diameter back. So every part of this piece has to come out. So let's try to get that sawed out. So we're going to use this bit here, and this is what we call a pipe cutter. So you put this on the end of your drill, and you stick it inside the pipe, and you just cut as straight as you can and level as you can, and it'll cut all the way around the pipe down below it there. We're going to go just below that little lip there, and hopefully it will come up. We'll pull the whole thing up and out, and then we will insert in the new flange. All the way around to dig in deep enough under the little overhang of that pipe. We're going to start cutting this pipe out first with a regular PVC saw, just by cutting a few slits. Okay, so we sawed off, see how we do little vertical slices here? Just go quarter-wise all the way around and he should come right off. That will open back up the full width of what we need here. Okay, so as we continue, you can see we've gotten about almost half of it chiseled off. We just need to chisel off that other section there. Alright, so now that we've gotten all of those chunks out of there, and we'll vacuum up down there over our plug, all those little chunks that fell down. But you can see it's still sticking up about a quarter of an inch or so. So what we need to do now is we need to come back in here with this and just cut right around the edge here, just to get it slightly below the surface of the floor, so that when we plug in the new flange here, that he'll be able to fit down in there. So you can see by just doing a quick test fit, he's sitting up too high. So he needs to really be touching the surface of the tile there. Alright, so I was just dry fitting this the new flange. And if you look really closely, see how it's tapered? It gets wider as you go up to the top. So what you're supposed to do with this is you're supposed to turn this around and tighten him, screw him up the thing a little bit, and to make him expand more so that he'll wedge in, because when you put this in right now, he's spinning in place. That's not tight enough. It's supposed to be tight enough that it should take a few knocks with a rubber mallet to get this thing to stay. So that's what the purpose of this gasket is here. This I don't know if they call it an O-ring, but we'll just slowly tighten it up on here until it gets wide enough that it offers enough resistance when you stick it into that 4-inch pipe there. So that's how these work. This was originally, this part can be used on cast iron pipes there, as well as PVC. This is according to Odie themselves, the manufacturer. So that's what this gasket was meant to do, is to repair when you normally used to have the old cast iron. So this would wedge in place there. Pull your plug back out. All right, so now you can see here we've chiseled it so that it's nice and flush with the surface here. It's perfect now. So now all we do is we're going to insert our flange in here, and you just slowly turn it around, and remember the orientation where it needs to be, because your toilet is going to be resting at 9 o'clock and 3 o'clock. So that's where you want your bolts to be. And we're going to adjust the gasket more to make it tighter. It should be tight enough that you really got to mallet it down good. This would be a perfect time, if you haven't already, to hit the subscribe button down below. And once you hit that subscribe button, you'll see that little gray bell. Click on that, and that will alert you to every time we put a new video, so that you'll never miss a video. And also, if you like our video here, you can click on the thumbs up button down below. That lets us know that you like us. And any questions you have, please enter them in the comments down below too. All right, so we have it fitted in place here. And we're going to drill 4 holes into the concrete, and we're going to run Tapcon bolts into the concrete. Those are those special blue bolts that are made for going into concrete, because you do want to hold these down. Now in this particular case, see, it'll wiggle some. So you don't want that. You don't want it moving at all. So those of you who have wobbly toilets, if you have a wobbly toilet, and basically who doesn't, that's the reason. It's because they didn't bolt down the toilet flange here. See that? That's your root cause. And I can tell you probably 3/4 of the toilets I've ever pulled up myself and looked at and fixed, it was because they didn't screw this down. Now on the wood floors, all you got to do is get a stainless steel screw, or some other type of exterior decking screw, but something that's waterproof that you can use to go into your wood floor. But we have cement concrete slab here, so we have to drill with a concrete bit first and then put in the Tapcon. So this is the good time to make sure your orientation is correct here, because your bolt goes in here and then it slides over to the finishing position. So you want to give yourself enough room to make sure that you have a 9 o'clock and a 3 o'clock position here. Okay, and so let's go ahead and get this bolted in. And so anyway, if you're wondering, well, how is it that the old toilet didn't have a problem with that flange being an inch up? Well, you know, it turns out a lot of the older toilets have these big, huge bases, that some of them are hollow, and they can go up and over a flange like that with no problem. But a lot of the newer toilets, they try to make the base profile smaller and flatter, so it would not go around this too good. Okay, and then in terms of the depth, this is about how you want your flange to be, just above the toilet, right by the tile surface here. So you want it to be around like this. Some people say, well, you should tile up to the flange and maybe have the flange level with the tile floor. Others obviously know that it should never be below the finished surface of the floor, which what happens a lot. Like if you tile right now and you come up a ½ inch, suddenly your flange is going to be below the surface of the floor. And some people will add 2 wax rings, which I don't particularly agree with. I don't think that's the way it should be done. The way you do it is you get additional rings that look like these. They're spacer rings, and you stack them up until you have the proper height, and then I like to silicone the inside of them together to prevent any kind of leaks. But anyway, your goal is to always have your flange to be up just above the surface of the tile here. Alright, so I'm going to be using these 1/4 inch by 1 3/4 inch Tapcons. So when you're using the 1/4 inch, you notice how it's got the green label. So those typically use the 3/16 inch concrete bit, the Tapcon bit. And likewise, like here's just another package that I use here too. And these are 5/32 drill bits from Tapcon. And that's what you use on the 3/16 inch screws. So they'll have the packages with a red stripe on it. So just make sure you understand what you're buying when you get them. I like to go with the thicker ones, the 1/4 inch Tapcon screws, whenever I'm going into stuff like, you know, heavy weight and things like that. So let's go ahead and get these drilled out. I just want to point something out to you. So I have here a hammer drill, and that's what this means. So you would set the dial over here, the hammer, to do your drilling. The only thing is today I'm not going to use it in hammer mode, simply because I don't have my ear protection here, and it is loud. And in this bathroom, forget about it, it'll be even louder. I'm just going to leave it in drill mode. So the difference is in drill mode, it doesn't have as much pushing. In hammer mode, it's going like, and it's super loud. But it's a difference of maybe 5 seconds to drill the hole with this, with medium effort on hammer mode. But on regular screwdriver mode, or that's drill mode, on regular drill mode here, it can take you 30 seconds pushing pretty hard to get the thing. So it's not like a game breaker for you. So let's go ahead and do that. Okay, so we always like to vacuum out the hole we just drilled to make sure that all the concrete powder is out of there, because sometimes it can interfere with your screw. And you notice how I've got one here that I just did a few minutes ago. So we always like to test. Don't drill all 4 of your holes at once. Drill your first hole and put your first Tapcon in and make sure that you got those holes the right diameter, because if you drilled a hole too big and now the screw is going to be spinning in place and not grip the concrete, now you're totally in trouble. You're screwed literally, because now your other 3 holes are going to be the incorrect diameter here, your other drill holes. So that's why I always do them one at a time and just make sure it's working as I go around. And notice how I keep it always vacuumed. I keep the whole area clean as I'm working here. Okay, so there we go. We got all 4 of our blue Tapcons are in place, and this puppy is rock solid. It is not moving 1 iota. So now we're ready to put the closet bolts back in place and put our little green wax ring replacement back on there. Alright, so this one goes over here to the 3 o'clock position, and then we'll tighten it down. This one goes over to the 9 o'clock position, and we'll tighten it down. And then usually if you're using wax rings, you always want to replace your wax ring. But with this, we don't have to, especially since this was temporary anyway. We just did this a few weeks ago. So we can put this green wax ring replacement right here on top of the toilet bolts to put it back together. Putting the toilet back on there. Alright, so now the toilet is in, but see how it still rocks a little bit front to back? That's because the tiles were put in uneven by whoever did the install. This was done by the builder originally. So we're just going to stick some blue shims underneath all the way around. And once they're cut and put all the way in so that they just barely fit underneath, then we can go ahead and caulk this with silicone. Okay, so there's my blue shims there. And you can see I've stuck them all around different parts of the bottom of the bowl there. And then what we'll do is, once you've tested them and you're happy with the location of each one of these, you get somebody big to sit on the toilet and make sure that the toilet's not rocking. It shouldn't bulge at all. It should be rock solid. And once you're happy with that, you snip them right at their length of where they're at so that they're flush with the edge of the bowl there. Then you can caulk without it bumping out. Okay, so we've put blue tape around only where the grout lines are, because when you combine caulk around these grout lines here, as you can see right there, what can happen is the caulk can start spreading up the grout line, and you don't want that. It's very porous there, and so I just give it a boundary there where it can't go past that particular point. Okay, so we're using the Kramer Fugi kit here. This is probably the best of the silicone shaping products out there, and you'll see others that look like this at Home Depot and stuff, but I don't think they're as good. They're knockoffs essentially. So what you do here is we're going to take a profile here, and we go around the bottom here of the toilet, and we find a profile that we like here, and it's going to leave like a small kind of a triangular shaped wedge there. You see that right there where the light's coming in there? So we might try to do this with a 5 and see if it works with a 5. It's a nice smaller size. If that doesn't work, we can go up to the number 8 size. But the idea is to keep it nice and flat to the floor here, and we're going to have to be able to go over these cracks. So that's why the Fugi comes with it in the kit with these little black little standoffs here. You put these on the bottom of your tooling piece here, and I'll show you this, and it allows you to skid right over the top of the caulking. As you're caulking, it allows you to skip right over the top of the grout lines. Okay, so here's what it looks like. So we have to use the red pieces because only the red pieces work with the little standoffs here. So it acts like a sled, and as you go across the grout, see, it allows you to keep going smooth without getting bumped around. The only problem is these tiles have a contour on them that's going to cause you to bump a little bit anyway. So we're going to see how this affects, if any, as we go along around the edge of the bowl. So we're going to caulk a thin bead of the silicone caulk all the way around the toilet here, the front and the sides, and we're going to leave the back open. You never want to caulk around the back, because if you ever get any water under there, you want to be able to go ahead and let that water come out the back there. So you never want to have it completely sealed 100%. So this is our dripless gun that we've got here. And the way this dripless caulking gun works is, this is a true dripless one, where there's a switch on here that when you put it down like that, it stops any possible oozing. So silicone is notorious for continuing to ooze out of the tip here once you release the trigger. So it really helps if you have a gun that specially works with silicone. And this one is true dripless, so let's go ahead and try it out. Okay, so we're just going to do a small bead going around the toilet here. And I'm just going to do the first half, and then we'll come back and do the other side. And you want to put enough in there that it will cover the opening. Tool up a little at a time. And I wipe off a little bit at a time. That doesn't look good at all. Alright, let's add some more. I want to go like that. Because you got to be able to fill in those cracks, that's the thing there. Alright. Alright, so we're going to start on the back and just tool it to the front. I'll do a little at a time. And you want to act quickly because this will start to set up within a few minutes. So you want to, like all this little bit that's on the floor, we'll wipe that off in a second there. Okay. So I just kind of do just the front section because the front section is always special. The front section tends to lift up a little bit there. There's a little bit further. The front section usually needs a little bit more material to go up in there. Okay. Yeah, so the other problem we have here is the builder gave us, very uneven tiles. They curve down, so the whole thing wants to sink down into the grout line. So you just have to keep your tool steady there and let it go all the way around there. Switch directions on it. So then coming here, we're going to come around this way now on it and scoop up the rest. And any that lands on the bowl, you can just wipe it off with your finger or a wet rag. So you see how you have that little drop out there because when we went over the grout there. So I'll usually come in and just add like a little blob right in there. And then we'll tool right over it. There you go. Okay, now over here I'm going to start way sort of near the back and just put a nice thin bead along there, just enough to fill in the cracks. Okay, maybe a little more in there. Okay, so we're putting the Kramer Fugi away, and it looks reasonably decent considering what we had to work with those grout lines there. So sometimes what I do with these little grout lines is I'll come back with my finger and just mold it a little smoother to try to get a straighter line across those. There's not a whole lot you can do about that. So then, as you saw before in the previous example where we had the 12 by 24 tiles and the perfect 1/8 grout lines and everything was perfectly flat and level for us, that's a much better case scenario for you. But that's why I say, just caulk one half of the toilet first and tool it down, and then put another bead of caulk around the other half of the toilet and get it tooled down as well. That way you have enough time to play with it and cajole it into place and make that silicone submissive to your desire and get it into the spot that you want it into.